Welcome back, everybody, to another awesome edition of People Talking from a Social Distance. Today I have just a wonderful guest, a man who is so talented that multiple departments claim him. And because we're recording this on March 16th, he's basically at peak Irish at the moment. So a person who I'm so stoked to talk with. Today we have Joe Mccormick.
Hello, thank you very much. Pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I don't know. I mean, between you and Jen, I don't know if there's another family in this community that's made me feel more like a teacher. Like, you're always giving me stuff to look at. She's always sending me questions. So I do appreciate you both, and I'm super excited to get a chance to talk with you.
Sweet. That's part of our job, I think, is just preparing the youth of the teachers to, improve upon what we've done, and keep the torch going.
Well, you've just won more points by considering me a youth in teaching, so I appreciate that.
Well, compared to this, everybody will use
it. So the first question I always like to ask, and I'm always intrigued by these answers, is as educators, that's pretty central to who we are, right? We don't get into education because it's just like a passing fancy, but I think oftentimes there are other labels or other things about ourselves that sort of either help amplify our profession or that even go sometimes against our like what we would expect from people. So if there was a label that you'd apply to yourself outside of your profession, what would that label be and why?
It would be a man of many hats, or otherwise known as a jack of all trades and a master of none. Ever since growing up, my interest varied far and wide, from nature and hikes and the outdoors to literature and theater and music, even though I'm not very musically talented, to art, to history. I would, middle school, I started diving into historical biographies. It wasn't until probably my junior year in high school, or junior year in high school, not junior high school, that I realized just how blatantly biased those biographies were of Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and all the Wild West and George Custer. It was like, so there was an awakening, but nevertheless, lots of interest to construction. I've poured concrete, I've framed houses. It's ironic. I'm not afraid to jump into some things blindly, and yet I'm also very afraid to do things that I should be very comfortable doing. Like trying a new painting style kind of freaks me out. So, I'm a man of many hats, but I'm also, very ironic, I guess.
I like that. I would say the same thing, even with like doing anything with writing or doing anything with reading. It takes a lot for me to like try out a new author, right? Because I'm like, well, I already have 4 or 5 examples of this style that I already like. Like, why wouldn't I just go read someone I already know? So I get that. And again, I'm an English teacher, right? My whole job is to get people interested in reading. And I'm like, well, I just don't know if that's worth my time. I love that idea, though, of sort of a Renaissance man in a way, right? A little bit of all these different things and doing all that stuff. And that makes sense in terms of your position in the building and the fact that you are with those different departments. You've gotten a chance to sort of engage in those different passions.
It's kind of how I got my job, because I was dual licensed in the art and the social studies, and Manuka High School needed a part-time art teacher and they needed a part-time social studies teacher. So I kind of fell into it, never thinking I would ever leave that place, because who else would ever need a half and half? But life as it's such, not only I split it into thirds and went into tech, and created more stress in my life. But it's new interests, new passions. The video game class, when we ran it, it was really engaging with the kids, connecting on a different level with them than I had been with, say, just the visual arts or the U.S. history. So it was a total different connection with different types of students, and I think that's what makes education, especially if you can broaden your net a little, you could really experience completely different learning curves and styles and connect with totally different kids than you would ever connect with in your set, my social studies classroom, So that makes life, rich and never boring. And I kind of miss. I hope video game comes back because I kind of miss making those connections with that genre of kids. So.
Yeah, right on. Well, I guess that's a perfect segue into the second question we'd like to ask. Again, I always tell the audience we don't plan these. So I think you've already sort of answered this, but what are some of the ways in which your profession has helped to sort of shape, foster, or embolden those different passions of yours? Are there even at this point in your career, not to age you in any way, how are you still finding places to sort of engage in those things that you're passionate about?
Well, I guess for starters, I think my profession actually saved my life. I think. When I was probably it was the first day of my tenure year. So I think that might have been my first day of my third year of teaching. I was diagnosed with a fairly significant level of lymphoma and had to go through treatments. And it was really, the doctor said, you need to take the year off. It's like, well, I'm a third year teacher. That's not happening. And I also committed to coaching. And I was the set director for 3 plays and the track assistant coach. So not only was I teaching on a block schedule, but I was stretched thinner than thin. The doc said, "You're nuts." And I said, well, it's my job, and it's who I am, so I'm going to bear through it. And the experience taught me several lessons. Mind over matter does, in fact, work. Because there were days I literally had to crawl to the bathroom to get up, to crawl into the shower to get ready to go to school. And then there were days where my staff members had to pick me up off the hall floor, put me in a chair, wheel me into the classroom so I could teach. The injections I took, basically, it's like COVID times 10 without killing you, because it's supposed to, well, it did save my life, but the interferon sure medically saved it, but having the goal of getting up and the drive to get to work, to be with the kids, I think that's what really saved my life. Because at that same time, I had lost my fiance. She went a different course. So I was pretty much rock bottom. And what saved me was the passion of teaching and connecting with kids, regardless that I was, kind of a living skeleton. But I made a serious connection with those kids about what life means, and mind over matter, and what's important. And I was telling them, me being here for you is more important than a sub, especially on a block schedule where you've got to change up your lessons like every 15 minutes. Right. That just wasn't going to work. And so it was a long, painful year, but teaching, having that position and that commitment and that dedication, I believe really saved me. Because if I stayed at home, I probably just would have withered away to self-despair.
Well, I think all of us probably are now reevaluating how much we said this year was the worst year of our teaching career, right? Like, oh, I didn't get to go to baseball games last summer. Huh?
This is approaching a second, but because I have that. And it was so far back, it was my third or fourth year of teaching, and I'm now, 1,000 years into it. So it did bring some painful memories back, having COVID and having even the vaccines, the side effects. There was a mental resurgence of the pain I went through that, I'm trying to work through right now. But, again, I can work through that because I've got a place to come to, and now I've got kids in front of me, so it even kind of rejuvenates my purpose even more. So, education can definitely can save the soul and the mind. So,
yeah, it's a beautiful sentiment, and I wholly agree.
Time for a new hat.
So that's awesome. Great segue. Let's move to a little bit lighter subject then. I'm always intrigued, and this is my favorite part of these interviews is getting recommendations from people in terms of what they're reading, what they're watching, what they're listening to. Because again, while we're still in some sort of socially distant environment, it's a great way for us to connect with our colleagues, right? The thing that someone recommends, you get an insight into what they're thinking, what they're seeing, and what they're reading. So if you had books, movies, shows, albums, what are some things that you could recommend to our colleagues that would help them sort of see the world the way that you see the world?
Ooh, I don't know of any. Well, okay, so the movies, there are, I guess they hit me profoundly and shape my world based off of my life and circumstances. So obviously working through that cancer and coming to work, that was like the first year to the second year, I think Schindler's List came out, and so I made it a passionate, part of my career to always show Schindler's List to juniors in U.S. And I guess it just really emphasizes the fragility of life. Having experienced nothing compared to obviously what they experienced, but that, I lost like 45 pounds in 30 days. I felt like a skeleton and seeing, and, part of social studies is empathy, right? Trying to really hit empathy in kids. And that film really punched me in the gut. Having, I guess, the timing of it was, and so, it's still, obviously, it's affected of me. So that'd be one movie. At the same time, when I was graduating college, the resurgence of like Native American interest came out, and so Dances with Wolves was a huge blockbuster hit. And despite several faults, it did at least showcase for the first real time a different side of the American West through the lens of some Native Americans. Obviously, still really kind of biased in some lenses, but it at least presented that. And for the first time, it actually hired Native American actors to portray Native Americans instead of putting a white man in makeup. And that really kind of sparked, as I mentioned earlier, when I was, middle school, I'd be reading all these little novels or biographies. Well, I also, dove into, the Native American side. And I've always had some sort of special, passion or connection to Native Americans. And so I just kind of really dive into that. And the fact that they still are persevering despite the almost third world conditions, if not third world conditions that they're living here in the United States is something to behold. And, I don't know. I just think more awareness is needed. And in my classes, my U.S. histories, even though it's not necessarily part of the official curriculum, I'm always injecting little tidbits of Native American, issues, vantage points, what ifs, justice, social justice. And so with our latest administration, naming a Native American to a cabinet position, that's a huge, I don't want to call it a win, but it's at least a step in some acknowledging that there's some issues there.
I couldn't believe that was the first time Native American was especially for Department of Interior. Like,
yeah,
that's a bit on the nose, but like, yeah. I also, the first time I actually got a chance to deal with any Native literature was actually at the college level. One of my favorite professors, Doc White, taught American Lit 1, and she's like, we start with the beginnings, which is the Native American myths. We talked about the Iroquois Constitution. Yeah. And there is something, I think I have a similar thing of like, there's just something visceral about the entirety of the canon of American literature is built on the backs of the oral tradition of the natives. And like, it's so integrated, but we don't talk about it. Those types of things have always interested me as an educator and as a reader and as a learner.
I guess, again, because the Jack of all trades, I can't ever have just one. But the last one is a book and that got turned into a movie. Again, a very personal connection because it's deals with my dad. And the book's called We Were Soldiers Once and Young by Commander Moore and I think it was an AP photographer, Galloway. And it deals with the 7th Air Cav in Vietnam. And so my dad was a part of that unit. I mean, that was his commanding officer. And the movie then, it's the same title. It's about the first major battle engagement the United States forces had in Vietnam. But the story kind of goes deeper because, it reflects that story, and my dad's experience reflects the importance choices play in your lives, and then ironically, how fate can intervene. So my dad was a freshman at UW-Madison. Woo, go Buckeyes, right? And my dad being the youngest of 13, obviously he probably learned the pleasures of alcohol at an earlier age than most. And so his freshman year, he had a lot of fun, a lot of fun. So much so that he flunked out and then got drafted.
Oh, wow.
So in the course of a year, he was having the joys of UW-Madison and then the horrors of a jungle 8,000 miles away. So I share that story with my students. It's like, you know what? The choices you make can have impactful decision, impactful consequences. That's the word I'm looking for. Whether good or bad, decisions we make and actions we take have consequences. Thankfully, obviously, he lived because he came, back, and he was not actually involved in that battle. He was at the base camp unloading the helicopters of his buddies. The reason he didn't fight was because his Army-issued glasses had not arrived, and so they wouldn't let him go. Now, he was a radio op, so he was the second most targeted person. And so there's a twist of fate, that he's kind of saved by eyewear. And the other irony is, the battle took place November 14th, 1965. And on November 14th, 1969, I entered the world.
Oh, wow.
So just, good and the bad, but it's, it strikes home. So I feel like I am connected to that story and that experience, in a, I don't know, existential way, I guess. But
I've always thought Vietnam and Korea, probably 1 and 1A, are the two least understood conflicts in American history, right? Like they're represented in culture a lot, but I don't think anyone really gets what is going on in either of those.
No, they don't. And I feel bad because I think Korea really gets the short stick, and now I think even in the K-12 curriculum, the nickname Forgotten War is just now an excuse to kind of, rush it along in a day and let's move on,
right.
Which is terribly unfortunate for I had an uncle in Korea. It's a disservice in some regards, but in every regard, but it is what that is, unfortunately.
We could talk about conflicts in American history, I think, for an hour. I don't think that's what the listeners came for today. Next thing I like to ask is, again, I think a lot of us, we play our position in the building so well that it sometimes there becomes sort of just an expectation of who we are and like the things that we like, and people can just sort of make that assumption, right? Like they're like, oh, Dario loves Shakespeare, and they're not wrong, but I think oftentimes we don't sort of think about it. We don't give an opportunity to sort of think of those multifaceted parts of people. So I always ask sort of like a hidden treat or maybe a surprising fandom or activity or like something that if you didn't tell us, we wouldn't have guessed that it would be something that you're interested in or something that you do or something that you're passionate about.
Well, Sarah Ward knows this, but I'm a huge theater buff and musicals. When I was a student here at the high school, I was involved in musicals, DDA, dramatic duet acting.
I'm the speech coach. I know what it is. Yeah.
I feel like I have to explain to everybody else who might actually see this. It's like HDA. We had some great times going down to the Theater Fest out at U of I and ISU. So there's a huge theater side of me. And most recently, because of my former student, Taya Sahin, I am currently taking ukulele lessons. In fact, I forgot to bring it. I was going to bring it to strum a tune, but yeah, I spent COVID summer kind of YouTubing it, and for Christmas, my wife actually got me formal lessons. So every Wednesday, I walk down the street, and I'm trying to teach an old dogs a new trick here with the uke. So we'll see how it goes.
It's fantastic. I always love when someone picks up a stringed instrument. Obviously, longtime bass player here, so
okay.
Like that's great. I got to ask, do you have a specific favorite musical theater, like either piece or show? Because I could watch Music Man like every weekend for the rest of my life and probably be okay with it.
I directed Music Man at Manuka. Let's see. When I was directing, it's different when you're directing. It's just enjoying watching. Because when I directed, we did 1984, and that was phenomenal. Yeah. And then we went to Theater Fest and saw it being performed and said, "Oh, those guys suck." Because our kids were so much better. But Les Mis is probably one of my biggest favorites. Obviously, being a history teacher. When I was here as a senior, it was Grease, and we kind of, rocked the house. Ironically, I hate Grease the musical almost as much as I hate Grease the movie, which is even worse. I know I'm going to offend some people out there. So sorry. Let's see. Hamilton was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, I think Les Mis, and I do like Joseph, the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and 42nd Street. I can listen to that almost all day. So
I'm going to date myself here. When I was quite young, I went and saw the last Donny Osmond run of Joseph, Technicolor Dreamcoat with my parents. It was pretty phenomenal.
At Theater Fest, my senior year, so we're at the U of I, and I'd never been to that campus before. We're in this, 3,000 seat theater, state of the art at the time, and the all-state production was Joseph, and you could have thought you were downtown Chicago. I mean, these high school kids were so phenomenally talented that that kind of hooked me, just like, and also teaches, I think, can teach all of us what teenagers are capable of, given the right direction and the resources, they can be phenomenal. They really can.
I would agree. That actually goes, one of the students I had when I was at Providence she did Rizzo for Grease the musical.
Okay.
And ended up going to Juilliard the next year. So
nice.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. I would very much agree. Like when you give some of these students these platforms and you're just like, it blows you away. Yeah. All right. That was awesome. I like to finish off with just some grab bag questions, and you picked two of my favorites. So we'll start with the heavier one, I guess, of the two, which is, if there's one thing you'd change about the world or teaching, what would it be? And there's so many things to choose from. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say from your perspective.
I guess for starters, I think the concept of compassion and kindness doesn't have to be politicized. And, no, it shouldn't be, and it should just be a part of humanity, and the recognition of, I guess, the difference between privilege and right, and acknowledging that both have responsibilities. And I'm seeing, as obviously as a teacher of U.S. history, our social and political situation is, in my eyes, tenuous and a little nerve-wracking, a little disturbing. And I think if we just try to be a little bit more compassionate and kind to one another and listen instead of shout, we might be in a better place, And so I think that's kind of going to be my mantra moving forward with my students in the next however many years I'm allowed to teach, is, trying to emphasize that over the noise that's deafening us right now.
There's a real beautiful Vonnegut quote that kind of gets to that, which is where he talks about why he's a humanist. And he says, as a humanist, I treat everyone with kindness and respect, not because of some sort of desire for a reward in the afterlife, but because it's the correct thing to do. And that's always stuck with me, is like, yep, that's who I want to be in the world, and that's how I want to approach things. So preaching to the choir on that one. I think that's a great goal. All right, and then I was like, there's got to be more that he wants to change about the world. There's got to be more, but no, that's great. You showed restraint. That's good. We'll just leave it at that. Tenuous political situation. I think some people can read between those lines of what we're saying. All right. This is my favorite question, and I was hoping that everyone was going to answer it when we started doing this. I'm not mad at any former guests, but I'm so excited when this one comes up. If you could have a theme song, what would it be? And even more importantly, would you want it to be something where everyone could hear it, or would it be only something you could hear when you entered into a room?
Well, I have, again, I have several favorites. Even just narrowing it down to 3 was hard for me. And they all kind of probably run the chord of what I've been talking about, you know, compassion, maybe the fragility of life. But Bruce Springsteen's "If I Should Ever Fall Behind," kind of a ballad. He does several different versions, but, you know, even just the title there kind of gives you the sense of what the theme is. You know, the need for companionship and friendship and compassion to help us get through this journey. Obviously right now, because of what we're approaching, I'm playing more of the my traditional music. So right now I'm engrooved with Flogging Molly's "If I Ever Leave This World Alive," which just it's a clever twist of the words, and again it touches base on, you know, companionship and the fragility of things, and to cherish what we have. And then completely off kilter, but "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd. Again, I cast a very wide net of music, and that none of this even touches some of the, you know, the BB King or the, you know, some country folk bit or some heavy metal. I mean, I have a wide net, but I think those 3, the themes kind of touch base to really who I am with life and compassion for one another. So I would want them to be in the room to experience, you know, feel the lyrics, see how it impacts me physically. Just because I think that's, you know, if you could feel the music and the lyrics, then you've got a better chance of living it than just, you know, hearing it with one ear, or, you know, reading the lyrics with not just a glancing through. So I would definitely want to share that experience with people, not you know, alone, or have them wander off. So,
well, I mean, if you're gonna have a theme song, right? What good is it if not everyone else is jamming out to it? So I completely agree with that. I'm gonna say that was a beautiful bow on the whole thing. Just again, guys, we don't plan these this way. It just sort of happens. So that's all credit to you, because I probably was trying to steer it in other places. So once again, I can't thank you enough for taking some time to be here, to talk to me from a social distance, and just enlighten us, because all this was great. I hope you enjoyed it, because I sure did.
I did. Yes, I thank you very much. Sorry if it was kind of Debbie Downer a little bit, but I don't know, I guess that's why I have to go back to Bob Ross every other now and then to get a little happy trees and stuff. So yeah, I'm a weird duck, but it's who I am.
Yeah, no worries. And then those the people I want to talk to are the people who are going to make me think, and you definitely made me think today. So thank you once again.
You bet. Take care.